evening. I'm Melissa Ridgen with your APTN News Weekend. The Quebec government says that Joyce Echaquan's death will be the subject of a public coroner's inquiry. The announcement came from Quebec's chief coroner following an outcry by First Nations leadership. No word yet on an exact timeline for that report. Meanwhile, a group of Atikamekw chiefs were in Montreal to meet with Quebec Premier François Legault. APTN's Lindsay Richardson caught up with the chief of the Atikamekw National Council to find out how that meeting went.
We're joined now by Grand Chief Constant Awashish from the Atikamekw National Council. They've just come out of a meeting with Premier François Legault, and they're describing their feelings to be optimistic but cautious. So, Grand Chief Awashish, thank you so much for joining us. Can you just describe for us what the meeting was like this morning and what you feel was accomplished?
I think we had on both sides a mission to accomplish about discrimination. Of course, there's a notion of systemic discrimination that not everybody agreed on, but me, I still hold on my point of view, and many people and experts still hold on that point of view. It's not saying that everybody is racist. By admitting that there's a systemic racism against First Nations, it's not admitting that people are racist. It's just how everything was built on the inferiority of First Nation, and put aside First Nation so we can grab on what First Nation own. So, based on that, many bad thought about First Nation growth with time, with the history. Some people would feed those kind of mentality, and I think that's what we didn't agree on. It's the systemic, but I felt that he was listening, and now we're going to look forward for what he agreed for. He said he needed action. He wanted to do action. Just
over the weekend, they announced that there would be a public coroner's inquiry. Yeah. What do you feel can be learned from that we haven't already learned from, say, the MMIWG inquiry report or the Bien Commission report?
Well, I think, again, it's a good thing, but of course, there's so many reports about First Nation. Government should know what to do by now with First Nation. What we ask about that is we need to have someone who can be an observer in the process. He was going to look into it, and now we're going to wait for answer.
One last question for you. The death of Joyce Echaquan has mobilized Canadians, everybody around the world. Yeah. What do you think that non-Indigenous Canadians can do to better support First Nations or even Joyce Echaquan's family now moving forward in this?
Well, I think it's to learn a little bit more about the history of First Nation, all the different culture, languages. Go to just read books about First Nation. Go to event, art exposition about First Nation. Just go get the taste of what it is to be a First Nation, and try to put the goggle of First Nation has when they speak about themselves and when they speak what they went through. That's all we need. We need people to also, when they see racism happening, not to close their eyes, but to say, hey, it's enough. Let's move on and let's create a better society that our children deserve.
There we go. Very well said. Chief Awashish, thank you so much for joining us. Now, just to remind you, there is no set date for when we will be receiving that public coroner's report, but we'll be continuing to cover the story as it unfolds. Back to you.
October 4th was a day for honoring and remembering missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. Across the country, families and supporters held Stolen Sister Vigils. In Smithers, located in northern BC, family members called for change on the Highway of Tears. Lee Wilson has more.
Vehicles drive by showing support for a vigil held by family members and supporters, bringing awareness to murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls. The vigil took place in Smithers on Highway 16, also known as the Highway of Tears, due to the high numbers of people that have gone missing for decades. Jackie Bowes has been bringing awareness since her cousin Jessica Patrick, an 18-year-old Indigenous girl who went missing from Smithers in late August 2018. She was found murdered 2 weeks later on a remote road near town.
Before Jessica went missing, you know, we were aware of what was happening on Highway 16, but since Jessica went missing, and we took it upon ourselves to create noise and bring out the awareness, because everybody thinks that it won't happen to them, but it does impact everybody.
From 2018 to 2019, Matthew Jefferson walked across Canada to bring awareness to MMIWG after his aunt, Frances Brown, went missing off Highway 16. She was never found.
First started, people were blissfully ignorant. They didn't want to know. And now with media and with all of these activists all across Canada, it's impossible to look away now.
Kayla Mitchell was not born yet when her family member, Ramona Wilson, went missing at the age of 16 near Smithers in 1994. She was found murdered by the airport a year later. Her case remains unsolved to this day.
There's a lot of violence that Indigenous women and I do see a lot of community members stepping up and having our voices heard, but it's really at the community level. It's really community-based. It's not at the higher-ups.
In 2018, Canada held a national MMIWG inquiry, and 231 calls of justice were released. Families are still calling for those changes from the inquiry to take place. In an email to APTN National News, the Minister for Indigenous Crown Relations Office provided a statement about dealing with the violence. It stated in part, "Together, we must co-develop a national action plan that will set a clear roadmap to end the systemic causes of violence against Indigenous women and girls and LGBTQ and Two-Spirit people." According to Kayla Mitchell, sharing the names and stories of MIWG will keep pressure on the government to make changes take place.
With election time, we really want to call upon our leaders and decision makers to really make a change and consider our Indigenous women's lives.
Matthew Jefferson shared that finding common ground will be key to finding a solution to this national issue. He believes the work is not complete until people no longer have to hold up posters and pictures of their lost loved ones, looking for answers.
This is the problem. So what I'd like to see is no one out here. No one having to be out here for these reasons.
Lee Wilson, APTN National News, Smithers.
A historical wrong is closer to being rectified. The Missanabie Cree First Nation has been awarded $150 million from the federal government, compensation for 114 years of displacement. Most of those displaced have been living in rural areas located in Treaty 9 territory in Northern Ontario. A land claim settlement with Ontario in 2010 got them a 39-kilometre squared tract of land, and they received reserve status from the feds in 2018. Missanabie Chief Jason Gauthier estimates that the establishment of a new community will happen within 5 years.
We're going to make sure that we're doing it properly. So we're going to make sure that there's proper water, proper surveying of the lands itself, soil sampling, geotechnics, everything that we need in order to make sure that that what we're doing and where we're doing it is the proper place to do it. So we don't want to run into to issues later.
We need to take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll take a deeper look at the ongoing efforts to stop sport hunting in Algonquin territory.
But moose is not just something that we hunt, you know, it's a ceremony for us.
Welcome back. With the start of school in full swing during the COVID-19 pandemic, some families opted instead to homeschool their children. In Manitoba, homeschooling has nearly doubled compared to last year, and as Brittany Hobson shows us, Indigenous families are using this opportunity to come up with a more culturally appropriate curriculum.
Recess is over!
This year, Laura Forsyth, along with her sister, have chosen to homeschool their kids due to the pandemic.
We saw in August, mid-August, the rise of COVID cases that were happening in the city of Winnipeg and in the province of Manitoba. And we didn't feel comfortable sending our children to be part of the social experiment that they're having currently in our provincial schools. So we decided to do an alternative.
The Métis family has 6 kids in total, ranging from grades 3 to 7. The home has been converted into a makeshift classroom, with each kid getting their own desk and cubby space.
We try to emulate the school day as much as we can. We have 2 breaks and a lunch. We start at 9, we end at 3:30, and then we various days have different kinds of courses that we take. We take 5 a day, so it could be social studies, math, science. We have phys ed, they do dance, French class, and so we do a variety.
With homeschooling, now they're able to provide specialized classwork as they need to.
Take these words here, read the sentences, and find the word that best fits. They're at their own pace. No, we don't need to rush to go with the herd. They get to slow down and really understand a concept before moving on to the next thing. And then in that, we get to see the strengths that they have, and then also some of the opportunities.
You excited saying that? Okay. So you have to spell the word two first before you spell amber.
Approximately 85 kilometers away in the small city of Portage-la-Prairie, Amber Bolio is homeschooling her twin daughters, as well as her brothers, with help from her mom. Today's lesson begins with journaling, and will eventually incorporate lessons not always found in the history books.
In residential schools, when there was kids that went to the residential schools who were Indigenous, that's what the residential schools were for, Indigenous peoples. So they went there and they wouldn't let them speak their language and they would cut their hair.
There's a big emphasis on land-based learning, as well as learning the Ojibwe language. This is the first time it's been included in the kids' classwork.
And to some extent, we were teaching them the basics, but I feel like this is really an opportunity for us to teach them how to be fluent in their own language.
Bolio says converting to homeschooling was a difficult process in the beginning.
You have a lot of reading materials on the Manitoba website, but there's not a lot of direction on what to do. There's zero funding available for parents who want to homeschool their children, which is just a tragedy at this time, especially with everything going on.
Despite this, Bolio stands by her decision to protect her family. Brittany Hobson, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Human rights group Amnesty International is calling on the federal government to discuss a 5-year moratorium on moose hunting with the Algonquin in Barrier Lake, Quebec. The Algonquin say that the population will be decimated if sports hunters continue at their current rate. Here's Lindsay Richardson with more on that.
A moose is not just something that we hunt, it's a ceremony for us. It's something that we do because that's, as an Missanabie people, that's who we are.
It's like something really spiritual. I've learned that from my parents and my grandparents, and it's just important to share for everyone else to know.
So this is why we're here today. We're shutting it down because we're saying no more. You may not want to listen to us, but now you have no choice.
Some people actually leave the meat there and just bring the antlers and bring the hide. Our people don't do that. Our people need that resource. We need that to eat.
They're coming in all directions right now. So I would expect that this gets resolved in a timely manner, because this is a very dangerous, escalating situation.
Everybody thinks it's the natives that are blocking the road.
It's something that's not taken very lightly by our people. We want to work with the government, first of all, to come up with a plan, but we can't be have our foot on the gas pedal going towards a brick wall.
Nestled deep within one of the richest wildlife reserves in Quebec is the Algonquin territory of Barrier Lake. It's small, population about 700. There are no stores here. Many choose to live off the land. A trip for supplies requires 2 hours travel in either direction.
It's too far, to try and live on other sources of meat.
Barrier Lake Chief Casey Ratt says wild game once thrived here, but in just 10 years, the moose population plummeted by 35%. Quebec opted to issue fewer tags to hunters in 2020, saying a moratorium is, quote, by no means considered. Minister Pierre Dufour says current numbers are concerning, but not critical.
Especially around this time, I mean, they kill, between 90 and 116 in 1 month. Meanwhile, my community will harvest 1 or 2 or 3 moose in this time.
Elder Linda Thomas says the moose were given to people by the Creator, and for them, the animal represents food sovereignty. The collective of Algonquin communities agree. Without a 5-year pause on sport hunting, the moose will disappear.
It was a mutual agreement between the moose and the Missanabie and the Algonquin people. And right now, we still respect that. But other groups, unfortunately, Quebec and CPAC do not have that same respect for the moose and the wildlife.
White Duck says one hunting outfitter is already taking the Algonquin Nation to court over their decision to block access to trails leading into the bush. 9 camps are now spread out along the stretch of Highway 117, monitored by police. The camps themselves are peaceful. Children play here. Adults sit by the fire, drinking coffee.
It's still crooked.
Some finish crafts.
I tan moose hides. I teach the kids how to tan. It's very important to pass on the traditional knowledge on that.
But they're here to keep hunters out. And in the last few weeks, they've been facing more resistance. One woman rammed a demonstrator with her car. Another man threw a moose leg. As a pressure tactic, they blocked the highway for 2.5 hours. They're reportedly taking boats and planes to access the hunting grounds. But mainstream media focuses on one thing: Indigenous rage.
They should show the whole story and not just clips or something that perceives to make First Nations people look aggressive or whatnot. They should tell the whole story, what's behind it. There's reasons why our people react the way they do.
Corey Jerome is one of the many demonstrators who's been logging the events on the ground through his own videos, including one incident where a forest ranger was allegedly caught filming the camps from a ditch.
You're heading right there, you watch a little girl piss. That's perverted! It's a stream, please. They're doing this, that just to make us mad. It's just going to get worse before it gets better.
Provincial police would not confirm whether charges were laid in any of the above incidents, only that a few minor incidents were looked into. CPAC said the forest rangers patrolling the wildlife reserve have shown exemplary professionalism and have avoided confrontation with demonstrators. Intimidation continues. When a moose leg again was thrown at one of the camps, they made the best of it.
I'm not sure, I didn't ask him.
The leg itself is roasted, marrow eaten, tendons, hooves, and hide all used. Nothing this precious goes to waste.
I don't like to say it this way, but this is their grocery store. This is how they live. This is how we've always lived. And it's just non-native hunters, that's what they don't understand. They think we hunt for sport just to fill up our freezers. We take what we need.
They drive the roads with antlers on their truck to represent their value of the antlers. Not the meat, just the antlers. And do you eat antlers?
Amnesty International doesn't mince words. They say this is a human rights issue, and in a letter, call on the feds to intervene. Quote, it's clear provincial and federal ministers need to firmly defend the role of Indigenous people in decision-making that concerns them. They also need to lend support to Indigenous peoples when they're confronted with negative reactions. Amnesty says the Algonquin Nation's actions prove they are leaders in conservation. Letters of support from other First Nations and provincial party leaders say the same. With weeks left in hunting season, there's risk of more confrontation. But Charles Ratt says if nothing is done, the reserve's ecology could be changed forever.
You could go in any direction and identify how it would affect. It would affect, of course, our people. It would affect the predators. Therefore, it would affect the smaller animals as well. Right down all the way down the line of the ecosystem. right to the vegetation and everything else.
For now, the government is offering to reimburse hunters who bought tags for La Vérendrye and who've not been able to access the bush. But the Algonquin Nation says the camps are not coming down without a workable plan to ensure moose numbers go up. Lindsay Richardson, APTN National News, Barrier Lake, Quebec.
Time for another break, but still ahead, a museum exhibit dedicated to extraordinary COVID masks.
You know, there's a lot of healing that's going on in the creation of this artwork, and we're just continuing to do what we do to heal each other.
Welcome back. During the pandemic, many artists have spent their time being creative. Now, a museum in Alberta has been collecting some of that work by those artists and showcasing Indigenous culture COVID-19 style. Tamara Pimentel brings us this.
This is a space that connects people from all over the country, a record of different pandemic experiences expressed through traditional art. This collection of masks at the White Museum in Banff is called Breathe. It started off as a social media group when the world was hit with COVID-19.
When we first started this, I don't think we realized just how popular it would become, how explosive it would become. I mean, it's almost like the virus, you know, itself, and that it's imitating life. And the way life works.
Natalie Burton and Lisa Shepard are the two Métis artists who started Breathe to connect Indigenous and non-Indigenous artists.
You know, there's a lot of healing that's going on in the creation of this artwork, and we're just continuing to do what we do to heal each other in the best way that we know how in this modern day, you know, with what we're dealing with 21st century pandemic.
From seal skin to birch bark biting to moose hair tufting, the Breathe exhibit showcases traditional artwork that's been around for generations. But this is the first time the techniques are used to make these types of masks.
Masks aren't part of our culture historically. We beaded everything. We beaded leggings, moccasins, jackets, vests, hats. This is brand new. We've never had the occasion to bead a mask, but this is the time that we're living in now, and we're still here. The work that we're doing is still vital.
The Breathe exhibit will be opened at the White Museum until mid-January. Tamara Pimentel, APTN National News, Banff.
Some stunning artistry there. Well, that is a wrap on the highlights from this past week's news. Thanks for joining us. I'm Melissa Ridgen. Have a safe and healthy Turkey weekend.